Welcome to Turks and Jerks. Everybody, week 5, an interesting week in the NFL. A slate of games that included the most punt returns we've seen in a long time. That was one of the big headlines from this week.
That was one of the big headlines from this week?
It was
the
one
number
of the
of
big
punt
headlines.
returns?
Yes.
Also,
did you not like the punt return?
A number of punt returns for touchdowns, or just the number of punts that were returned?
I should say the number of punt returns for touchdowns.
Yeah, because I don't think the topic of conversation was, man, there were like
16 punt returns.
There were 88 punts on Sunday, and a whopping 77 of them were returned.
Fair enough. You know what I'm saying.
You know, there's an influx in fair catches, you know.
Yeah, funny. Guys, real funny. But we're going to start with our Turks of the week, and JR is going to start because Ben is still over his 17-minute quota for Turks last week.
Oh, my Turks. Well, I was wavering a little bit, and I'm trying not to get on the bandwagon too quickly, but he's awesome. It's Dak Prescott, even though I changed it at the last minute because I'm trying to stay away from that bandwagon, so we will get back to Dak Prescott. But I'm going to go with Brad Sanford.
Yeah.
And I will call him that from now on. Yes, I know you guys are losing your minds right now. His name is Sam Bradford. Honestly, I can't even say his name correctly anymore. His name is Brad Sanford. The undefeated Vikings are on a roll, man. Outside of the fact that his jersey looks like he's in junior high and he's wearing his high school brother's jersey, and it's like this much bigger on his arms, Sam Bradford looks awesome. And it goes to show, again, the way a system works. I mean, okay, he looks pretty bad in St. Louis, and so far everyone who plays lately in St. Louis looks pretty bad at the quarterback position, so maybe the problem is somewhere else. And then also looks pedestrian in Philadelphia. So, I mean, a system that works out for a guy that puts him in the right position. The man sits in the pocket. The man surveys the field. He takes care of all of his options, and he finds the right one at the right time. He's not a mobile guy. He's not fast. He's not flashy. Put him in a position where he works to win, and the man is working, and he's winning, and I like it. So the other question is going to become, also when I brought up Dak Prescott, Teddy Bridgewater's out for the season.
Yeah,
what are these two teams going to do?
He's going to be on the market. I think he's going to be on the market. Like, Teddy Bridgewater lost his job because of a non-contact injury. It's just like a freak injury that happened, and they made the trade for Bradford. This team looks like it's going to make a run. It's too early to make that call. But if they make any sort of run to the NFC Championship game, whatever it might be, they're going to say, Teddy, you're either our backup or he's going to be on the market they're going to want to trade him. And a lot of teams should be interested in Teddy Bridgewater.
Teddy should not accept a backup role. But again, I think we are actually getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. Because we're looking at 5-0.
They're undefeated. Their defense is the best in the league. Now that's been established based off the Broncos yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, you can say through 5 games they have the best defense in the league. They did spell Everson Griffin's name wrong yesterday, so equipment manager maybe gets a jerk for this week.
So it's coming together where we'll see what happens with the season. Again, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Right now in week 5, Brad Sanford is looking amazing. I like it.
I think that, I've said this before, but I really think that Brad Sanford has gotten a bad name. And I don't maintain that he's a great quarterback or that he's lived up to the billing of number 1 quarterback, but he has had more than brief snippets of a level that we would describe as better than competence. That is not Earth's greatest compliment. But in a league where it's hard to find a quarterback, he has had strings of, hey, pretty good games. And we forget. So let me just look up, give you a couple things here, because the last time he played a full slate of, doing this on my phone
That's
is
his
tough.
biggest thing. Yeah, it's the injuries that have been hobbling him.
But his last year in St. Louis, he started 7 games. His yards per attempt was still pretty low at 6.4, but he completed 14 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. And the year before, when his yards per attempt was at 6.7, he was 21-13 when he started all 16 games in St. Louis. Those aren't great, but they're not horrible.
Right.
Like, they are actually okay. And then in Philadelphia last year, he got that yards per attempt up to 7. It was 19 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. But if you'll remember, that second half crushed the first half. He was pretty good. It just came after the point where we gave up on the Eagles.
Yeah.
So, and then these now 5 games in Minnesota this year, he's had a string now of about 12 straight really good games. And also some history in St. Louis of being, okay, actually not so bad. So I just think he's a slight victim of being the number 1 pick and having stretches where you're like, why are you throwing the ball right into the ground? Like, what's happening there?
I find it one of the things that I find interesting. He's moved around so much in the league, but do you think it's difficult to learn a new playbook?
Of course, yeah.
Because he picked up. They said like, there's no way he's starting. Was it week 1? Was right before he got traded. So he didn't start week 1. He came in week 2. So what? 10 days.
I signed Chase Daniel in a rotisserie because I liked Chase Daniel, and I was like, oh, he's going to be in the Eagles' offense. This will be all right. And then it turned out no, of course not.
And also a point, since I mentioned Dak, also he and Romo, apparently, as Jason told me off air beforehand, apparently in the first 4 games as starters, 5 is the first 5 games. They have a very, very similar quarterback rating or overall QBR.
Which we don't know what it means.
No one knows what that means. Both didn't turn the ball over, and Dak had his first turnover of the season on a fumble recovery day. And honestly, whenever a quarterback fumbles, a lot of times I don't even like giving him that unless he just ran around and dropped the ball.
Yeah, some quarterbacks fumble a lot, but when it's not one of the guys who fumbles a lot, hey man, sometimes you're gonna find.
And also when they go, oh, I can't believe he fumbled. If your arm is up like this and a 270-pound man with full force runs into your back and pulls your arm down, I think you might drop that ball.
It's true, but there are some guys who seem to have some really keen sense of, oh, I got to tuck this right now.
Right, there's awareness, exactly.
But he's only done it once, so you're allowed a few.
He's doing fine as far as I'm concerned. So, and honestly, I don't know where the Cowboys fans will fall into this, but maybe freak out. It's time for a new sheriff in town.
Well, keep
pun intended.
Yeah, I mean, and right now Jerry Jones has been consistent, and he's like, this is Tony Romo's team. It's probably what he should say, right? But like, nobody needs to worry about it. We don't need to talk about it. To me, this would be my argument. No, because there's a good chance it'll take care of itself. Either Romo won't come back as quickly as we thought. He'll have a relapse. I mean, I don't want him to, obviously, but he obviously, it's a tough go. We're talking about back injuries, which are bad for humans, let alone football-playing humans. It's the NFL, or Romo will come back and Prescott will get hurt. So like odds are, it'll take care of itself. And considering the situation the Cowboys were in last year, I mean, they should just revel in, oh, look at this, we might have too many quarterbacks. Obviously, if they're history would tell us that if they're rolling, and if they're 7-2 when Romo comes back, or I think he might be back sooner than that if things progress as they have so far, but if they're 6-2 or 6-1, I don't see, teams don't make that change. Things are going too well.
Absolutely.
And then if he stays healthy all year, and then in the offseason, I don't know what his contract status is, whether he's a cut guy who gets on by somebody else, or whether there's value in trading for him. With his injury history, I doubt you'd get much for him, but you'd get something. You think about how many pretty good teams who will be looking for quarterbacks next year will take a shot on Tony Romo. How much better would we feel about the Broncos if Tony Romo were the quarterback now? How much better would we feel about the Jets if Tony Romo were their quarterback? There are a lot of places a guy like that can go. My Turk of the Week is an odd choice. So I've been railing against mostly punting and an inability, too frequent punting and an inability to understand when to call timeouts, how to manage the clock for a majority, not all, of NFL coaches. But both things are getting better.
Since the dawn of Turks
more coaches understand this, when to use this, the value of this, when it doesn't matter, like in the first half, or in the second half, when you're looking at 2nd and 7 in a non-critical part of the game and the play clock's about to run down, hey man, have it be 2nd and 12. It's not ideal, but that timeout's probably worth more than 5 yards at certain points in the game, depending on field position. And punting, obviously, and more people we're seeing going for it. We're just seeing the value of that. The NFL has the dumbest rule in sports, the dumbest rule in the history of sports. I'm running down the field. I'm going to score a touchdown. Oh, I fumbled on the inch line. If it goes out of bounds, it's our ball at the inch line. If it goes 1 yard forward and then out of bounds, out of the end zone, the other team didn't recover it, but it's their ball, and they get 20 yards. What kind of logic is that? Here's what you have to do to get the fumble, to get the ball when another team fumbles. Recover the fumble! Then you can have the ball. If you recover it in the end zone, you can have it at the 20. But if you don't recover the ball, you don't get the ball. The other team gets it. I would say where they fumbled it, but if you want to somehow be punitive, have it be a 5-yard penalty. It's the only 20-yard penalty in football. They're about to score, and then we're giving them a 20-yard penalty? You get the ball? It's a game-changing moment. It's illogical. What's the reasoning for it? give the team that fumbled the ball where they fumbled it, or give them a 5 or 10 yard penalty. That's dumb, but I wouldn't be railing against it like this, because then they'd have the ball on the 5 or the 10 and they'd have some chance to still score and make it. Because CJ Mosley made a great pick yesterday on Kirk Cousins and took it in and tried to score, because we all know we want touchdowns. You reach for the thing, and it came out. It came out. And that would have made it 17-16 Ravens in the third quarter. I think it was already 16-10. That's how the game ended. Maybe there'd have been field goals, but basically there was no more scoring. And then the Ravens would have been in a position to win that game 19-17 with a field goal at the end, instead of having to go for it on 4th and 10 or 4th and 8 or whatever it was. It's an insane rule, and there is no logical defense for it.
I think the only logic that you can find in it is that if you are punching that ball out, you're rewarding the team for causing the fumble in the first place.
You got to recover it. You don't get rewarded just for causing a fumble.
I think, right, I understand
what
that.
about at the 40? Oh, they fumbled, your ball.
Right, exactly. That's why it doesn't make sense for that, but I'm saying is, like, if they cause at least, like, I wouldn't give them the half-yard line. Offense, the ball back. I'd give them at the 20. But
the 20, first of all, that's a 20-yard penalty. Where did you create a 20-yard penalty from?
You have to match the dumb penalty the other way around.
If this weren't already a dumb rule, you wouldn't make that argument, because there's no precedent in football for it.
I'm trying to make it dumber.
But why would you give the ball to the team that didn't recover the fumble? It's literally, what kind of nonsense is that?
Answers. It is a little bit absurd, yes. Actually, it's a lot absurd.
Well, it's like a punt. I mean, if you punt it and then it goes out of the back end zone, that's a touchback.
But
so they're thinking that way. You gave away the ball with your fumble, and now they got it out of the back end zone.
But a punt, it's not the same, because a punt is giving the ball away. As soon as that ball hits the foot, the possession has changed. Here, the possession didn't change. You just fumbled. The fumble's at the 40.
So if you fumble it into the end zone, would you say give it to the offense on the
I'd
1
give it
yard
to him
line?
I'd give it to him on the 1 yard line.
1 yard line.
But I would be willing to win this rule change. I'd be willing to take a 5-yard penalty, and that ball goes to the 5. If they fumble at the 2, you can put it at the 7. You move it back 5 yards.
He's a magnanimous.
But the point of the fumble, it just doesn't. It's illogical, and it's game changing, because it takes a touchdown away.
Right, of course.
And obviously you don't give it a touchdown.
Or at least the
and there's no defense of it. There's nothing similar. Again, it's the punt rule, but it's not a punt.
You're not turning it over.
You have to recover a fumble. So that's why CJ Mosley, who made a play, because I want to rail against this dumb rule in Turks. So CJ Mosley, for making that play, he shouldn't be punished for fumbling, because he fumbled out of bounds.
Fair enough. My Turkish John Elway, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. I was discussing with Ben off camera. It's entirely to do with the Houston Texans and Brock Osweiler, and literally nothing to do with the Denver Broncos. Brock Osweiler is a bad quarterback, and it looks like the Broncos got lucky. That's my Turk. See how simple that was? Ben, JR, Jason will be back with Turks in just a second.